Mountain to the molehill here, right?
There you go.
So it's the easiest way that I can do this, just because of time.
Thank you, General.
And so I'll spend about a good 30, 45 minutes. I'll answer whatever questions. I will use the Socratic method. Well, I will choose, kind of go around and I'll just sort of pick. So be prepared with your question. No statements, just ask a question. And just please, and I'll ask you, who do you represent anyways if you don't say who you are, okay? So I appreciate the flexibility to do this like this. It's the best I can do. I'll be here through Sunday, so maybe I do this again tomorrow, so if I miss somebody, okay? I'm standing here in front of a stone wall so we don't show off anybody's, Red Pill TV or all the others, that are here. I could have stood in front of the doctor, but I don't want to advertise it. I like A&W root beer.
There you go.
Okay, so are you guys okay to do this like this? I mean, of course.
Perfect.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Anybody got any questions?
No,
Yeah. Very good.
Two things. What do you think is going to happen in the next 3 months as far as turning America around? The way that the whole COVID narrative is being crushed.
Oh my
What do you
dear.
think is going to happen?
Yeah, so I think what's happening with the advent of new information, and you guys heard some of this breaking stuff today. I mean, even in the first morning here with Dr. Zelenko and
okay, madam.
all the doctors, all the frontline doctors, Sherry Tenpenny, McCullough, Malone. Malone's been booted off of every social media network I think that exists. So you know that he's basically telling the truth. So I think in the next 90 days, what we're going to see, and this is also tied into the Supreme Court decision, which I personally think was adequate, but I think 50% was pretty weak. So I think what we're going to see in the next 90 days, this government that we have right now is not about to say, you know what, we made a mistake. We're sorry. We didn't mean to do this. I actually think that we're going to see a doubling or a tripling down of additional means or ways by which they will try to figure out how to shut down society. Okay, the people that, and this is really come out of the Supreme Court decision. I think either the Fifth Circuit or the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals has a case in place. So if you read some of the decision from the Supreme Court, they're still waiting on an appeals court decision to make some other follow-on. So it's not done. Next 90 days, I think the government is going to step in, put additional pressure on all of us here in this country. And I think that you have seen what Biden has said in the last 24 hours. You see these people that are watching this. You all pay attention to these hearings that nobody pays attention to because they're on C-SPAN all day, right? Pay attention to these hearings that are going on. You had the number three person in the Olson is his name. Matt Olson used to run the National Counterterrorism Center for the country, for the Director of National Intelligence. He's now the number 3 in the Department of Justice. He's the one that said we're going to create a new domestic terrorist unit of lawyers. I mean, what happened to what's called the National Security Division of the Department of Justice already, and that only exists in Washington, D.C. So these are steps that are being taken by the government to continue to impose their will on the American people, whether we like it or not. So what we have to do is we have to then continue to get these messages out. So whoever you are, whatever you're representing, the kinds of audiences that you can get to, the kind of people that you can bring on, and I've said this before, I said this in Tulsa. You all, if you're doing your job, you should be sharing great guests with each other. Yes. You should call somebody up and go, hey, I just had this guy Flynn on, he's great, I got his point of contact, you guys ought to try to get him on. I mean, I'm one human, but I'm trying to do my best. So next 90 days, very, very difficult time, because the government is not about to go, oh, we made a mistake, they're going to triple down right here.
General Flynn, Cannabis Conservative, cancon.locals.com. I was wondering if you could comment or give your opinion on the Project Veritas drop, specifically the fact that these documents were in a top secret folder, being unclassified documents, as well as the risk that Major Murphy took in putting his neck out there on this.
Yeah, I would read anything into something that, unclassified documents. that are in a folder like that. Don't read anything into that. Don't complicate it. Okay? And the major, he basically came out with a statement, which is a little bit unusual because he would have had to have gotten a permission to be able to do that. But it's not really something that that he's putting a statement out to say, hey, this is really bad stuff, and this is going like this. I think what I remember from what I read in the last probably 48 hours is that the major was part of a DARPA effort, and basically DARPA said, it's too dangerous, right? And they gave it to Heisman, and they walked away from it, and you know, go do your own research on what DARPA does. DARPA does a lot of things. It's a research agency. They do a lot of things. So the major basically said, you know, I think the right thing. Hey, we looked at it, too dangerous. We gave it to Heisman, and we decided that we weren't going to go that path. And so what happened is what we've now learned from Project Veritas, okay? And I think Project Veritas, James O'Keefe is a terrific, and he always has something else. So I think that Veritas, those that are paying attention to that, don't think that that's the only thing. I believe that Project Veritas will have more to that story because they do protect, their cards and they play them at the right moment based on what's happening and what kind of threats our country's facing. It's like Veritas, Project Veritas and Judicial Watch is another organization. And there's a couple of others, but those two type of organizations, they don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, don't matter. They'll come after you if they think that you're trying to hide the truth. That's what journalism, and that's what, you know, these in the case of Judicial Watch, it's really a legal arm, and it's also an investigative arm. So these types of organizations should be allowed to do that, like you all, right? I mean, not everybody in here is an investigative journalist, but that's what we want the media to do. We want the media to question the government.
Right.
That's kind of what you're asking about, really. It's like, so if DARPA didn't want to do it because it was too dangerous, because I think that's the gist of what I read, and then all of a sudden, you know, Comrade Fauci picks up on it, then, and he was allowed to do it. I mean, if you paid attention to, I forget whether it was Dr. Zelenko or Sherry Tenpenny this morning, you know, how they manipulate, and they you know, the gain of function, how they kind of washed gain of function, right? And then they allowed it to happen. Well, gain of function, when you see gain of function with biological, anything biological, that means that you're weaponizing it, essentially. You're going to weaponize it. So we got to be really, this gets back to the 90-day question. You know, we now know this. This is breaking, right? And there's other things there's other breaking news today, last 24 hours, Australia, some stuff going on in Europe. So anyway, don't forget to ask me about false flags. Yes, ma'am, right here.
General Flynn, what do you make of the fact that this is a phenomenon that is in lockstep? Every government, it seems, every corporation, every politician, get the jab, get this into every person. Is this just pharmaceutical companies running amok? Is there something above the food chain? How is this being accomplished all over the globe?
Yeah, it's like, that's probably the $64,000 question, right? Because the American people, and frankly, early on in this whole thing, nobody could believe this. Everybody's going, oh, this is nonsense. And then so the media jumps in, you know, and those that are controlling them, and they start going, conspiracy theory, right? You're a conspiracy theorist if you say anything, right? So a lot of those things have been debunked.
It's a mystery.
Right? Yep. So how can this conspiracy be this large? Mm-hmm. How can we have this? So this is not something that happened overnight. It didn't happen because Donald Trump became the president. I think a function or an effect, a second, third, fourth order effect of him becoming the president, they realized that they weren't moving fast enough, and they took some things for granted. And right now, actually, I'm very optimistic because, again, I do think that we're winning kind of every day. It doesn't feel like it. There's a lot more sacrifice ahead. But so how can this happen? How can this happen? Well, you know, you have different organizations. You have a world body, okay? World Health Organization, World Bank, World Trade Organization. You have these groups of nations, right? You have the Well, the UN's is a bigger organization. You have these groups of nations like G7, G12, G20, right? So you have these different structures, governmental structures, and when they get together, if somebody's a great American president, and they're standing there and they're saying, well, we're not going to do this anymore. I mean, kind of that's sort of what Trump sort of did, right? Trump stepped in there and said, this doesn't make any sense for my country, right? So why am I doing this? Why am I investing so far, why do I keep pouring trillions of dollars into something that's failing, right? So these groups of nations, when they get together, they have these various conversations. And then you have the wealth. And then you have the wealth of the world. And since COVID, and I encourage every single listener, and whoever's here, and you, read Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book.
Yes.
I'm about halfway through it. I was reading some of it last night on the plane in. Read his book. I mean, one of the fascinating data points I saw was that I think he said in it there was 484 billionaires created since the start of COVID. Global. 484. I mean, and then just the whole thing. My big thing, one of my sort of pet peeves is children. Is how children are affected by all this, right? Because I grew up in a great family, and my mother was like, get out the door, right? Or if you had chicken pox, you go rub up and down against the other kids next door, whatever, So, and then what we've been doing to children, I think the number's around 67 vaccines now. If you were born in the early 90s, by the time you turn 18 years old, you get 67 vaccines. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I have relatives with autism, and I have nieces and nephews that deal with this kind of an issue, and that's very personal to me. So, to raise it back up to your question is there an elite body of people that sit there and play like they are God, because they are godless. Yeah. They're definitely godless. They look at somebody that says, well, go pray more, and they're like, they don't look at that and go, well, that will work. They don't think that way. They think that if they get involved, they're going to make it happen. I mean, look at what Bill Gates has said publicly. Yeah. Publicly. Yeah. And again, relationships matter in this.
That's right.
These very wealthy elite groups that then come in and deal with governmental institutions, right? I mean, why is it that we have a Republican body? I mean, because I don't really worry about the Democrats anymore. It's the Socialist Party of America.
Right.
I kind of look at the Democrat or the Republicans in this country and I go, what are you doing? I mean, come on. I watched Rand Paul dealing with Fauci the other day, but to me, after a while, it was kind of like a high school argument, I mean, I love Rand Paul, but it's like, hey, I would be sitting there going, you need to be fired. You need to be brought up on charges right now. And Chairman, we need to bring this guy up on charges. He's murdering people. Yeah. I mean, that's so we have to be honest. Okay, those of us that now, because I'm now back to like, what can I control? Yeah. Because I can't. None of us, all of us, right? Leadership is basic things. It's you fix what you can, right? Those are the things that you can control. There's things that you cannot control, and you just got to live through them. Okay, especially if you're in the military or on a battlefield. And then there's things that you can take control of, right? And I think that what I'm trying to tell your audience is take control of the things that you can actually take control of. All this other stuff that's up at the top, it exists. And it's very dangerous. It's hazardous to our health. Because COVID is not about health. COVID is about control.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me jump on this side. Let me jump on this side.
General Flynn, thank you. Kelly Walker from Freedom Talk. And I have so many questions I'd love to ask you, but you might know Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer. He wrote a book called Irresistible Revolution about Marxism in the military. He came down to a little coffee shop.
The Air Force.
Right. So we've become friends, but I think.
Questions.
Yes, sir. He feels like we're not
the
gonna
general
win
in
this.
me. Get to the point.
Yes, sir.
Order.
He feels like we're you too. Can we get Marxism out of the military?
Yeah,
Can we
so
win this?
let's broaden the question and like what's going on in our military? Yeah. What's going on with our military? And you know, we have when you get to the level that I was at, or generals and admirals, right? We call them flag officers. We always would try to caution each other when you go to promotion boards and stuff. Be careful that you don't promote somebody in your likeness. That's a polite way of saying don't promote an ass kisser. Okay? Because when you promote somebody you like this, that means that they want to be like you, you know, so they're going to tell you all the nice things that you want to hear. We have to be very careful that we don't, you know, and we have some of that. We clearly have some of that. This, today or yesterday, in fact, it's out today, I think. I think it's either in the I think it's the Federalist, probably yesterday, published it today. And it talks about the cultural shift that the Secretary of Defense is going through, and how it's going to hurt our military, it's going to hurt our readiness, it's going to hurt our war-fighting ability. Okay? Our military, our active National Guard, Reserve, our uniformed military is not designed for any other purpose. We're not supposed to be. Let me take that back. It's not supposed to be designed for any other purpose than to fight and win the nation's wars. Okay? Now, they are, you know, depending on the National Guard or the active folks, they are plucked sometimes and put into the fray, like the White House right now has put military out in a bunch of states to help out with the shortage of nurses and doctors. So we use the military in different ways over time, but the military is to fight and win our nation's wars. As a former senior officer, I have a responsibility to help continue to build the institution of the military. I want to go and find young kids, or if moms or dads or some young person comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about joining the Army," I want to sit there and talk to them and make sure that it's the right decision for them, because I have a responsibility, whether it's, you know, formal or not. I feel it to say I want you to join the military. Today, I have a very, very difficult time because we finally had the Marines last 24 hours. Marines finally, only for the first two, were finally given a religious exemption for the shot. That's only two. Okay, we have an entire SEAL community that's out there. But trust me, there's no atheists in a foxhole. None. People are praying. I know the many times that I was with people on the battlefield or getting ready to go on a helicopter to transit someplace on a battlefield. You're saying a prayer before you get on that aircraft. There's a lot of religious people in our military. So what we need is we need leaders. We need warriors. And so in case of Matt Lohmeyer, you know, look at what they did to him. And his book went through the whole cycle of approval process. It was all done properly, and they still slammed him. I mean, that guy ought to, you know, and to get to the command that he had, which was one of these new space commands, to get there, I can tell you, in the Air Force, it's very, very difficult. You're talking about a top 1% officer to get into the job, so they removed him. Just like they're talking about Navy SEALs who want religious exemptions. These guys, these people, they cost $1 gazillion to build, right? One Navy SEAL. So I want leaders, I want warriors, I want people that are willing to fight. We are done. We have to be done participating in wars. Okay, we're a T. We're trained. We're an A+ at participation. We get participation points. We have to stop that. We have to get the right goals, objectives for what is it that you want me to achieve. We go achieve them. That means winning, and then get out of there. That's what we need. That's what we need. And too often that's happened where we don't get that. Let me jump right here to you. Yep.
Me?
Yep.
I would like to ask you what you say to Republicans who claim that there was no widespread election fraud. Good question. Mm-hmm.
They're out of their mind.
Amen. No, I do.
I mean, you know, a lot of them have said, and some very, very, very serious Republican leaders have said and made comments, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but essentially, well, what's 10,000, dead voters? Right. To change the outcome of the election. One fraudulent vote. One fraudulent vote done intentionally disenfranchises one legal vote.
Exactly right.
And that's wrong.
Yeah. Amen.
One vote.
Yep. One
fraudulent vote done intentionally.
Right.
So we know. And the other thing about this, so there's a ton of evidence And when I use the word evidence, that implies that then we got to get that in front of a judge, and the judge has got to make a decision. So stop, okay? The courts, the court system, the judiciary, the judicial system, which is the third branch of our government, does not decide the outcome of elections. Okay? And I've had this argument and debate about the 2000 election between Gore and Bush. And it was the Supreme Court's decision that no, the Supreme Court decided in the I think it was the Broward County, right? They decided on constitutional issues, and then they threw it back to the state. They said, "This is these pieces are unconstitutional. So state, your decision." That's the beauty of our Constitution. So our states right now. I was just up in Pennsylvania, and we've got a Republican president of the state Senate for Pennsylvania who says, "I'm not going to." We're not going to do anything about it. Let's move on. Let's move on. We cannot move on.
No.
Now that's out of that side of my mouth, okay? Because we have to make the American people confident once again in this very sacrosanct thing we call our elections, right? So everybody in this room, and if you're rich, poor, right, we're all equal when you go into that voting booth. But remember, the courts will never decide and should never decide. They decide on constitutional issues. What we have to decide as people, the citizenry, is we decide on, on the outcome of an election. An audit, right? After the 2016 audit, I can tell you, after the 2016 election of Donald Trump, where he was elected by the people of this country, immediately the Democratic Party came in and says, we have 3 states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, I think Michigan. We need to audit them. And if I remember correctly, in fact, I know what Trump said. Trump said, "Be my guest." And I think in Wisconsin he ended up winning like 2 million more votes or something like that. So we have to fix it. That's out of one side of my mouth. Because the other side of my mouth is we got to get out and vote.
Yes, we do.
So the reason why Virginia turned around, and I think it's the first time since 2004 that we've had a Republican governor, and I think the state legislature is probably about the same. Okay, long time, and that's because of the ground game. That's because of pastors and frankly, and moms. Okay, who got into? Youngkin, spent a lot of money. Great, he had a good campaign. I actually believe that it was because of preachers and moms. That's right. So we have to get out and vote. We have to overwhelm the voting system. Like I'll say this today probably. Vote or vote plus, meaning you can't just say I'm going to go vote, and then I'm going to walk away and I'm going to hope, right? No, I'm going to vote. I'm going to get my little camera out. I'm going to stand there just like this. Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Because I do not want my vote stolen, at least in that precinct.
Break the algorithm again.
Right.
What's your
So,
opinion about?
I'm glad you said that. This is not just about machines. Actually, machines to me are like a very small part of the whole system. The entire system. There's been fraudulent votes in this country, fraudulent outcomes of elections for over 100 years. Okay, over 100 years. So, and there's plenty of examples. Well, what we have to do is we've got to get out. People have got to get out and vote. Now, you cannot say any longer, and I will say this because I say this all the time now. We cannot say, "Oh, I don't do that political thing." I'm sick of this shit. Excuse me. But I feel like I have a family. I have grandchildren. I look around and I say, "Man, this is not why I served this country. I didn't serve it for this."
Thank you.
I want us to argue. I want us to debate. I want us to be involved. But I want this country to be the United States of America, not the United Socialist States of America.
What's your Convention of States? What's your opinion about Convention of States?
I'm not a fan of it. We don't have enough time.
Okay.
Everybody needs to vote on election day, on paper, in person.
I want to ask you, because a lot of focusing on national stuff, and I've heard you say it a couple times right now, that people need to get involved and they can only change what they can change. And don't you think that they need to understand that they need to go to their counties and get involved in their counties?
Yeah, so my reason I like to use is local action, national impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Local action, national impact. Local action equals national impact. Local action, will achieve a national impact. But local action, our founders created the system from the bottom up. They argued.
Republic.
they argued for many years actually, but they argued for months at the tail end of writing everything about that beautiful phrase, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, because they wanted to maybe say pursuit of property, or they kind of argued about the last component versus the other two, because the first one, you can't have liberty, you can't have anything unless you got life.
Right.
So I think that where we are, and then what they created a system from the bottom up. They only gave the federal government a few things to do. What has happened in our existence, and every one of the founders has talked about this, they flipped the whole thing on its head. We've allowed it. We've allowed it. The whole system is flipped on its head, where the federal government is now in control of damn near every aspect of our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
The founders wanted us to have individual liberty. So your question about parishes, townships, precincts, counties, particularly counties. Counties are the lowest level. A county, so a group of county commissioners could walk in tonight and say, because they've been elected, they could say, we're going to go, they could decide, whatever the state, whatever the federal government says, they could decide, this is how we're going to run our elections. A county can do that.
Yep.
County can do that. County can walk in and go, everybody's going to come in and vote by hand, you know, by paper ballot. We're getting rid of all these machines.
Perfect.
If we have, you know, military, if we have invalids, we'll do the absentee, and we're going to have this period, this window of time. We'll take absentee ballots for, you know, 1 week after the election or whatever. You know, you can do it in a day. I mean, a county can make that decision by the Constitution.
Right.
So get involved. That's why I say, like, get involved. People
That's right.
can't.
No, well, if they
you know, you can't
Thank
go
you.
and say, oh, I'm not going to do this. You know, get involved. So anybody here
Thank
from
you.
Japan?
About DARPA.
No. Jump off the bridge.
From our listeners, for you know, a lot of people have got committee people, committeemen, GOP. We've got a lot of mama bears, and my fans, and we the media want to thank you very much.
Get involved. I mean, this is the thing. You guys, I will come to you. I got maybe about another 5 minutes. You guys are so important. Our problem, take this collective body, and there's others that are out there, is that we're not that well organized. We don't have like one guiding, you know.
We'll take
You're
doing it. We'll take
you're
doing it.
Huh?
You're doing it.
Well, that's probably not a bad thing, maybe, but we need that beacon, or we need that you know, that light. So if you all feel like, you know, you have to look at what are the values, what's the values proposition that you have for your organization, for your listeners. Why do you have listeners? Because you got people that are listening to you that go, I listen to her or listen to him because I trust them.
Right.
I trust them. They're authentic. They bring on good guests. They talk about the things that I'm interested in. And the other thing about all this new way of communicating, because media, the big media that sit in front of your TV is out. It's gone. I haven't sat in front of a television to watch news.
That's right.
I mean,
It's monopoly.
God, in years. I mean, I'll watch a football game because I like some games. I watch a movie, but nobody's doing that. So what they're doing is they subscribe, and then they'll follow you on a podcast, and they'll listen on their way to work, or they're wherever. So it's totally changed. You've got to get even more ready for additional changes in the world of media here in the next probably couple of years.
What about
Yes,
false
sir, we
flag?
come right here.
Pastor Patrick Collins here from Virginia, by the way. I represent Christian Patriots United, and here in Arizona, Jeff Sink for Congress. My wife is one of the several service members in the United States Navy. I'm a Navy veteran myself. She's on the chopping block right now because, as a pastor, her religious exemption got denied, and her chaplain asked her what. You seem legitimately Christian, and so she went down her list as to why he thought that. So she's on the chopping block. And my organization, Christian Patriots United, is there to fight for our service members, to try to help them get legal representation the best way we can, to fight against this, to keep them in the military. What are your thoughts on the government actually pushing through, pushing out our military and downsizing our military over this? I've got over 150 denial letters people have sent me from all branches of service, all cookie cutter, that say the exact same thing. And 19 and a half years, captain that I know, it's everybody. They're going to be losing their careers. What are your thoughts on the government actually pushing through the people out?
I'm only giving you a break here because you're a pastor.
I've got a lot of guy in me, so I'm good. I'm good, sir.
So again, a bigger question is, you know, And so I'll maybe take one other question. I'll go to you next, okay? Because you had your hand up a while. Pastors.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, some of you don't know the background of the Johnson Amendment, okay? Some of you may not even know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah.
So, but most people don't. They don't know what the background is and why it was created. Okay? But pastors don't need to be afraid. Okay?
That's right.
I'm not afraid.
I think that for you all, what you should be doing if you're regional or local or maybe you're national, go. You know, like I'm a big fan. You know, I love Leon Benjamin. He and I've met through this whole thing, and he's a great guy. And I've met some others. There are pastors who understand how to speak from the pulpit about the Bible as it relates to the Constitution. But if you stand there, because of the Johnson Amendment, you stand there on the pulpit and you say, I want my congregation to vote for this guy, the government will likely come in and shut you down. And they'll use the Johnson Amendment to say that you've stepped over the line and now involved in politics.
I don't do that in my pulpit.
So, but my point is that we need our religious communities in this country. I would like to see pastors who are leaders step into politics, and there are some that is happening. Or I want pastors to find the leaders in their pews to go and say, hey, you're one of the people that all of our congregation they go to. You know, so why don't you step in and run for county commissioner, or run for this, you know, the town council president, or whatever it is. So I want to see more of that. I want to see more of our religious community in this country. They don't need to walk the line. Talk about how the Bible relates to the Constitution.
Yes, sir.
And I'm telling you that you can't go wrong. I would love to see that. I mean, I'm a Catholic. I mean, I rail against the Pope.
Good.
Amen.
Good.
Thank you. And the Jesuits too. The
Against
Jesuits.
these other denominations too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Good.
But it's about the kinds of things that are coming out. They put the fear of God into these priests.
Yeah.
Right? And it's sad because you see some of these priests, they haven't been excommunicated because they're not saying, I want you to go vote for this guy. They're talking about the Constitution.
Yes.
But the hierarchy of that particular faith comes down and, you know, shuts them down, moves them out of there, tells them they're off the, you know, you're going to be pulled back up on the staff of the bishop or something like that. So one last question.
False flag.
Will
False
Jones,
flag.
the Apostolic Conservative Show. Thank you for your service. You talked about DARPA a moment ago, the science side of DARPA. DARPA also has a technical side. My question to you is that, do you think that the same way the FBI, CIA has been, the CIA has been weaponized against the American citizen, do you think that DARPA also has been, could be, or has been weaponized against patriots to start divisions amongst groups of patriots? Since we've seen a little infighting going on lately.
Yeah. So I think that what we have to do, and this is everybody, this is going to be my last
Thank you.
answer. We all have to take a step back, take a big, deep breath. Okay? And to me, the biggest, and this is what I lived through probably, I know definitely, what the American people have lost is faith in the institutions of government.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we've lost faith in the institutions of government. There's all these new polls out in the last 90 days about the Department of Justice, FBI, these intel agencies, you know, Congress, the military. I mean, it's all these things that are out there that show some factual proof that people they just lost faith. They don't trust. They don't trust the institutions of government. That's very, very dangerous for a constitutional republic. It's very, very dangerous for a constitutional republic to last if people don't have faith in the government and in the institutions of government, particularly in the executive branch. Okay, because the executive branch is really like, you know, for anybody that's seen some of the interviews I've done, I say we have two governments. We have a government that's elected, and we have a government of bureaucrats.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of that's where you're coming from. The essence of your question is we have this other government that exists, and they do things, you know, like a commander, a guy like me comes into Washington D.C. and takes over a large organization, You know,
Take
and
it
I've
all.
been on the battlefield. I'm used to saying, okay, men and women, we're going to turn to the right. Everybody goes, okay, and they all turn to the right. But you go into Washington, D.C., they're going to give you like white papers and studies as to how stupid your question was. So what we really require is we require a demand by the American people. Okay, so we require a demand by the American people in those institutions. And you'll hear me say this. You'll hear me say this a lot. This is not their fault. This is our fault.
Right.
As I look at this room,
Amen.
and you guys are average age here is probably 30 years younger than me. Okay? Well, seriously. And so, so actually your generation, for the most part, didn't screw it up. My generation screwed it up. Okay? My generation screwed us up. Because you kind of, you're in the business of trying to make ends meet, have a business, have a family, do whatever you got to do. Little kids, they don't know. They just, if anybody's got a young child or a grandchild that's young, I mean, they look up at their grandfather or their mother, and it's just like, it's total trust.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Total trust. Like when you're trying to teach a kid how to swim and you put them on the edge and you say, jump, Michael, jump.
I got you.
They jump, and like, if they don't know that they could drown if I said up and if I let them go.
That's right.
Right? So there's total trust. I wish that our government would be like that parent in the pool, right? Where they felt that bond with their citizenry. Okay? But they don't. And I will tell you, the political class of this country, which should never have been allowed to get to where it's at, is our fault. It's our fault. I don't blame them. I don't blame the people in Washington, D.C. We put them there. I don't blame the county commissioner. I don't blame the people on the school board. We put them there. So
False flag.
Not all of them.
That's the harshness of the reality. That's life. And life is not fair, right? Not fair. Not fair. Everybody's got their own little problem.
False flag. False flag.
False
flag.
What should we look out for?
Okay, so false flag. False flag. Yeah, good. I actually think that we are in a period. Kind of back to your question, that question about the 90 days. There's always things that are happening overseas, because we really haven't talked about China, at all, really, or Russia, or some of these other competing ideologies that we have. So there's all these things that can take place, particularly overseas, to distract, right? To distract. So I look for those all the time, and I'm sort of an indications and warnings type of person. That's been my life, looking at scenarios and looking at options and looking at best case to worst case. And I think we're in a period of time now where there could be a potential false flag that occurs. A false flag doesn't mean that people don't get sacrificed. There's not sacrifice. So I'm anxious about that. I'm anxious about that, whether that's in like Eastern Europe or out in the Pacific.
Or in America.
I'm very anxious about that. Okay, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, General Flynn. Look at all the people here, guys. Say hello. You guys are the news now. Hey! Yeah. Yes. Boom. Real
There you have it, you guys. General Flynn. What do you think about the false flag statement? Leave your comments. Love you all.